So we're going to begin this webinar today. It is my honor and privilege to stand in for our President and CEO, Su-Ling Ching, who could not join us today. Before we begin, I'm going to give you a very brief update on some of the activities that OBOT has been working on this week. We continue to advocate on behalf of the entire business community at all times to all levels of government. In particular, right now, we're turning our attention to the issue of rent relief and how that's been playing out. We continue to collect information from our members and from the business community at large on those types of businesses that are falling through the cracks and that the support packages are not addressing their issues and concerns. And we invite you to submit your concerns, questions, issues, challenges to a special website that we've set up. It's Stronger Together at ottawabot.ca. Stronger Together at ottawabot.ca. So please do share your challenges, your issues, your concerns, things that are happening within your business that have not been addressed. And we will do our best to include that in all of the advocacy and policy work that we continue to do. So it is my pleasure right now to turn this over to Karen Brownrigg. So Karen is the sponsor of our Wellness Wednesdays, and we could not be more grateful for her support. We are a not-for-profit organization, and we rely on the support and sponsorship from members like Karen and IHR Advisory Services in order to be able to bring you programs like this. So we are very, very grateful to Karen and her team for being involved. I just want to tell you a little bit about Karen. She is an accomplished human resources leader, certified executive coach, and business strategist with more than 2 decades of experience sharing 2 decades of experience leading transformational, mission-critical, security-sensitive, and crisis management issues and initiatives. Over the years, she has worked in the legal, telecommunications, and not-for-profit healthcare sectors with the Ottawa Police Service and for a federal crown corporation in the financial sector. Karen's career path has required her to adapt to local, national, and global environments where she has channeled strategic leadership and coaching skills and an advanced understanding of employee and labor relations, change management, conflict resolution, organizational health, safety and wellness, and talent management. In 2016, Karen refocused her passion for human resourcefulness, I love that, by launching IHR Advisory Services, providing HR and people solutions for growing businesses and supported by an agile community of HR and business experts whom she enlists from across Canada. I'm also going to share with you that Karen has twice been nominated as Businesswoman of the Year from the Women's Business Network. I think that's important news to share. And Karen is a leader from the heart. So Karen, I am going to turn it over to you. I'm going to ask you to give some of your comments on what you're seeing right now in terms of HR issues, because there are some very pandemic-specific things that are coming up. And then if you would kindly do the introduction of Dr. Etches.
Thank you so much, Lynn, and really appreciate and feel honored to be a part of today and to be here to hear Dr. Etches speak to us. And certainly it's been I think, a roller coaster ride. We have gone from, people adapting to change to the point of we're feeling like we're drinking from a fire hose, working in completely different ways and surroundings that we have before, to kind of finding our groove where we're feeling like, okay, this new normal is starting to feel like something that we can predict, but it's also starting to feel like we're a little stuck. And in the chat earlier, before this webinar began, we were all talking about the level of intensity that we're feeling with the, Zoom after Zoom after Zoom meeting, and how exhausting a day can be. So making sure that we're mindful around taking the time for ourselves and prioritizing that time for wellness and resiliency. And so I'm extremely excited to hear the tips that Dr. Etches is going to share with us today. And now that we've found our groove and we're struggling on a day-to-day basis with this feeling of being slightly stuck in the whole, I'm bored but I'm not, I need to move but I don't, I'm busy but I'm not, and I'm exhausted or I'm totally energized. Now we're getting into this mindset where we're going to be changing and adapting again and reintegrating back into the workplace. And certainly from a health and safety standpoint, and also from our own mental health, making sure that we've got the care and precaution in place and the dialogue is open for employees to share with us about what their concerns are as we now begin the early phases of reintegration. And I know that Dr. Etches has some very important information to share with us about masks and all things about the proper use of masks. So we're really looking forward to that. And before I turn the floor over to Dr. Etches, I'd like to give you a summary of her extensive career. Dr. Etches, our medical officer of health.
You don't need to go into detail, it's okay. Save time for questions.
Oh, okay. So we'll leave it to Dr. Etches to get started, and then and certainly the lengthy credentials. And we're so proud of the work that you're doing and how you've represented us. So just honored to be a part of today. Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt. I just I know that you know, my background and my training has given me some public health perspective and tools, which I feel fortunate to be able to contribute to help with the COVID response. I also really want to recognize that each of you are making the difference that we're seeing in the infection rate in our community, and it isn't easy. And so I appreciate thinking about it now as we go forward. You know, from an employer perspective, again, it's just incredibly important. The income that people need for health is you know, that's probably one of the biggest determinants of health, you know, whether people have employment or not. And so yeah, and meanwhile, it's been very hard on employers to be able to continue. And the workplace is always a good setting to promote health. So I think that you know, there's public health advice, you know, out there, and we're developing, and we'll launch today toolkits and things like that. But you know, there's the things you can do to try to screen and make sure people don't come to work sick. And but the work of maintaining health goes beyond just making sure the workplace is as secure as possible. And I could hear that, Karen, in your comments and your approach. So I thought I might just start by recognizing that when we do polling of people, we are hearing and we are seeing, as we look across the use of our mental health services, people are feeling more anxious. People's level of anxiety is higher than usual, and people's concerns and depressed mood, you know, also is coming up as one of the things that people are reporting. People are feeling it's very hard to balance work and life right now. For many people who are trying to work from home, seems like a nice solution, but it brings its own stressors. So people are reporting very much bigger challenges than usual between balancing work and other parts of life. So it seems kind of simple. I don't have like any new science really for you. We know this, but staying active is very, very important for mental health and physical health and dealing with stress. And yet we've had this message to stay home. And so I guess I'm trying to encourage a change, a shift to, I think Dr. Teresa Tam used the words like go out smart, you know, go out in a smart way. And the province has moved some of the real restrictions on how we use outdoor space, that have been in place with an emergency order. They have also changed. So we now have access to parks. All of the parks except the children's play structures. But that includes like tennis courts, and that includes baseball and soccer sports fields. Yeah, people are very much encouraged to use those spaces that we have in our communities. And then the public health advice comes along to say, can you try to keep it to your household as much as possible still, because we haven't gotten rid of the virus. So I know you're probably all aware of this, but the reason we say physical distancing is still important is because we're still seeing about 20% of cases that come forward. Nobody knew where they got it from. They weren't in contact with another case, or they weren't in contact with a traveler or somebody who had traveled. So that means there's still virus out there. We're working to detect it and contain it, but it's a challenge with this virus because people don't always know they're infectious. In the first 2 days, in the 2 days before someone feels sick, there's still a risk of transmission. So when we do the contact tracing, we go back 2 days before somebody was feeling sick, and we find out who are all their contacts in those first 2 days as well. So when you go outdoors, it does mean we're asking people to try to stay away from others. And we got a lot of questions about running or biking, on the paths, and, people breathing out, like how far does that cloud of virus go if it's there? I mean, first of all, we are asking people if they're sick to stay home. So, hopefully people who are coughing and, have a higher virus load aren't out. And we do know that there's very little documented transmission of the virus outdoors. So it's probably the best place to go for exercise in some ways is outdoors. And so, the practical advice, again, there's not a whole lot of science, but is to, beyond the 2 meters, if you can, stagger yourself so you're not directly behind another runner or cyclist, to try to go when it's less crowded on pathways, if that's what you're going to be using. Yeah, I think and maybe I'll bring it up at the risk of sometimes things get taken out of context, but the idea of socializing while you exercise, right? That's also important. So physical activity is good for mental health. So is social connection. All right, so we're totally missing that. And so can you do your activity safely with somebody else? Certainly within the household, we know that's already a bubble. You've been in contact. Someone outside the household, then it's more a question of, can you keep that 2 meters distance? And children, it's a harder one. I guess I think the people of Ottawa have done a great job. Recognizing there's a concern, there's precautions that can be taking those precautions. It's harder for children, to see their friends and not run over and play together. And so that's part of it when you're trying to get outside with kids, is to keep the kids from mixing together is a harder challenge. So again, thinking about when can you go, what can you do to try to help them out. That could bring me to masks. I will open, I don't need to keep talking. I'm happy, I could just take questions too, but maybe since you brought up masks, Karen, I'm happy to speak about that. Because, it's not culturally normal for us to wear masks, and it's not the easiest thing to wear a mask and exercise. I tried that. I wanted to see what it was like. And that was before it got really warm, right? Like that's going to be pretty challenging with the heat and wearing a mask. So, maybe try to do something earlier in the day, these kinds of things to keep the distance. You don't have to wear a mask all the time. But the masks need to be breathable. So we're looking for masks that usually people are making them out of a cotton or a cotton blend. And we do want the mask to be 2 layers. There's some evidence that the 2 layers is important to block more of the respiratory particles. 3 layers is not necessarily better. 3 layers can make it harder to breathe through. And then you get things going out the sides of the mask. Or if you have one with a seam in the middle, that's not as ideal either. So trying to find one that maybe instead has pleats or something that helps it fit over your face. And then I'm finding personally wearing masks, they can hurt your ears, the elastics. And so try to find a way to either use a clip or something behind the head so it's not pulling on your ears, or an elastic that's round rather than flat or having a sharper edge to it. That can make a difference. And if people know, because we talked about it early on in the pandemic, before we realized how these masks can be helpful in stopping spread with asymptomatic cases, that masks can themselves be a source of contamination. And so it is important as we wear masks to remember to keep our hands clean before we put them on, to try not to touch them, and then to, when we take them off, clean our hands. Yeah, so I mean, we have a lot of detail about masks and how to wear masks and where you can get masks on our website. And I want to acknowledge employers, again, are extremely influential in making this culture change happen. I think you are key, that people will change behavior if they have to wear a mask to access business, or they see employees in a business wearing a mask. It'll make them think about, oh, okay, maybe this is a setting where I should be wearing a mask. And so what we are aiming for, that culture shift, so that people just naturally will put on their masks when they're within 2 meters of someone else, and it will protect employers and themselves. So thank you for that. I'm happy just to open it up to questions. If there are other things people wanted to know about or reflect on, share ideas related to being well in this time of COVID.
Thank you, Dr. Etches. We have our first question that's been posted for you. And Sarah has asked, if the Ottawa data remains similar to today's current COVID stats, do you plan to send your kids to summer camps? And what will be the criteria that you will use to make the decision to send them or not send them?
Thanks.
Now you're in the hot seat.
Yeah, that's okay. We're all asking these questions of ours. So I think, the level of COVID infection in our community is decreasing. By the time we get to July and August, when most camps will be starting up, I do hope that we would continue to see that level even drop further. Right now, a lot of the activity we see is in long-term care homes and retirement homes, and I think that is hopefully trending in the right direction, decreasing. And so that's something I'm monitoring. I'll be sharing with the community. We have more and more products we're trying to create to share data in a way that is easy to digest for the general public. What I think, is a real stressor, so it gets at this work-life balance, is parents on their own trying to parent like 24/7. It's not really natural. Like it's not really the way humans usually raise their kids. Like we need help. I need help. I'll just speak for myself. So I think that I'm looking forward to camps. I'd like to see them up and running and going, as long as we can do it safely. The kinds of things that will make them safer, which is a key word. I think we can't guarantee that there will not be COVID transmitted in a camp. But the kinds of things that would decrease the risk would be to make sure, again, there's screening, same as a workplace. It is a workplace. It's a workplace for the camp leaders, to make sure no one comes in, no children, no workers, no parents who have symptoms of illness. If we do identify someone who's ill, make sure they get testing right away. That test turnaround time is usually less than 24 hours or 24 hours now, so that helps us quickly follow up. And making sure that the grouping of children and workers is small and not intermingling. So I have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, so I have a little bit of experience. They have gone to summer camps. There's a lot of kids usually like all over the place. So trying to direct and cohort, we say cohort, groups so that they don't interact as much. And then the follow-up, if we do find a case, is with a smaller group. So that can help. So I think that these are the kinds of things that camps are thinking of now, and will continue to provide advice.
Thank you. While we're waiting for more questions to get posted in the chat, I'm going to take advantage of the fact that I can hop in at any time and ask my own question. So considering getting outdoors in terms of how it can positively impact both your physical and mental well-being, is there a recommended amount of time per day that we should aspire to getting outside?
Sure, 30 minutes a day. You know, there's guidelines. That's for adults. I think the guidelines are 150 minutes a week. So, you know, some people try to do that all on the weekend, but I think the science would say it's better to be active regularly than try to lump it all into one. And so 20 to 30 minutes every day, you know, is ideal. Personally, I'm not hitting that target myself right now, but I try to set realistic goals. So, you know, if every day seems unrealistic, I see Karen smiling. We have to be gentle to ourselves and set realistic goals. So, and this is part of my family doctor background coming through too, right? So you think about where are you now, and what can you do to slightly increase.
Mm.
So if once a day, or well, that sounds good. If once a week is new to you, we start there. Personally, I try to say 3 days a week, and then I can usually achieve that. And then, you know, try to push myself to work up from there. And so give yourself credit for the small successes, and smaller steps are likely to be feasible, and then become part of your routine. So the other thing about building in physical activity, and I don't know, for some people outdoors may be new, right? Maybe people are used to going to a gym, people are used to going to a class. So this is new, to try to do some outdoor physical activity. When you're trying to make a new routine, it takes repetition and practice to make it routine. And the small things, I'm sorry, I'm not sure if you've thought of this, but like the small things that make it easier actually are scientifically shown to help too, like making sure you put your runners and your exercise clothes together, ready each day, so that you just have to, they're right there, you just have to put them on, and then you're dressed and, well, you're going to go out and do it, right? Those kinds of things make a difference.
No excuses. Can't find my shoes.
Right. So, oh my goodness. No, so you asked me about the minutes, and the other thing is, I would say for children, they need more. So children, you know, ideally you're aiming for at least 60 minutes of physical activity a day. You know, 60 minutes outside would be great. And there's no, I mean, there is a limit, of course. If you're exercising so much that it is affecting your social life and your work ability, like, you can take it to an extreme, right? That's not healthy. But generally those 30 minutes, 60 minutes are kind of minimums, and feel free to take it from there too.
Great, thank you. We have a question from Geneviève. Geneviève has written, we have 5 employees working in our manufacturing facility. What should be the frequency of bathroom, shared surfaces, shared tools, washing and disinfecting? So she's asking, you know, how often should they be cleaning all these shared areas? And the question goes on, I have access to the Ontario government manufacturing health and safety, but frequency is not mentioned. So I think that's a great question, especially as businesses are getting prepared to reopen, is how often do they need to be going in there and cleaning everything down?
Okay, I'm going to take that back to the team to see if they can come up with a suggestion, but I'm guessing they will also, like the Ontario government, not want to be pinned down to a specific frequency. And the reason is, obviously depends on the volume of use, and each time something's cleaned, it can be recontaminated again right after. And so it's actually the cleaning isn't the most important thing for employees, the most important thing is that they keep their hands clean and they don't touch their face and their eyes unless their hands are clean. So trying to keep surfaces clean. And I guess I would say, you know, more than once a day, twice a day, 3 times a day. You know, I think like I would aim for increased frequency compared to the once a day that used to happen, you know, for sure. But recognizing that you have to, it's like you assume that coming within 2 meters of anybody else is a potential risk for infection. You kind of assume that touching a surface that somebody else has touched is a potential risk for infection regardless. And so it's the other hand washing measures that are most important. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Makes sense to me. I imagine there's so many unknowns with this particular strain of virus that it makes it very difficult for scientists to actually say, this is going to be your best practice moving forward, because I think, am I right that there's so much unknown about it that they're hesitant to be held accountable to certain kinds of advice?
Well, we're also prepared to change our advice based on emerging evidence, for sure, and we are continuing to learn. That's part of it. But it is hard for one size to fit all when it comes to a particular business. I think it's sometimes you need a more specific, tailored advice or look at the situation.
Thank you. We have another question that relates to childcare. Is daycare safer than camps since they remain in a more stable cohort and campers change each week?
Yeah, I think there is a glimmer of hope offered to parents as the Premier said schools will not be open until the end of June. He also said that if we can move into stage 2 of the COVID sort of, I don't know if we're in the, I feel funny saying we're in the recovery process, but you know, in the second phase where we're relaxing restrictions, that the Premier did talk about opening up childcare again. And yes, I think usually in a childcare setting, there's fewer children per worker, and usually there isn't as much mixing, and so I think this makes me also maybe perhaps want to mention the risks that we look at when it comes to larger gatherings or smaller gatherings, or even just assessing which kind of businesses can be opened. It is a mix of the size and the numbers of interactions, the nature of the close interaction versus not as close interaction. Younger children in childcare will actually be higher risk because there's maybe more close interaction compared to a camp with older children where they can actually spend a lot of their time physically distancing. So there's a lot of different variables that would go into it. Yeah, so I think regardless, both settings, people are going to be operating a little bit differently this summer. There's no question.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Jazz, who owns a spa, and of course finding it difficult to purchase disposable masks. And she has sort of a 2-part question. The first one is, can I use reusable masks for herself and her clients? And part 2, do I need to wear a disposable cover-up for each client?
Thanks. Difficult things for me so when I say my team, I mean the Ottawa Public Health folks. We have physicians, that we have infection prevention and control leads who are looking at the guidance for different sectors. In a spa, again, there's a wide variety of services that can be offered. Some of them may be very intimate services where you do want to protect your clothes with a cover. But other services, you may not need to wear a gown of some sort or protect your clothing because it's less, there's less interaction. The masks, absolutely, I would encourage businesses to look at reusable masks because, you know, yeah, for maybe this in this case, the expense is an issue, the supply is an issue. Um, it definitely is an option, and that's what we're suggesting for the general public that is going out and accessing service. We're asking them to use non-medical cloth masks that they can reuse, wash. So that, I guess this comes into then the safe use of masks. So making sure that you wash the masks after they're used, and you know, handle them as if they're dirty when you take them off until you get them cleaned again.
Thank you.
So I would say, just in terms of sector-specific guidance, that's where I will point you to, again, to our website. So Ottawa Public Health will have some general things. I saw someone mention we have screening posters for you to use with your employees and customers. And then we'll point to the province has created a lot of sector-specific guidance. I think 90 different sectors that will also continue to add to what's there.
Great, thank you. Our next question is from Lewis. Is there a concern that the widespread and increased use of disinfectants might help to breed a new superbug?
Yeah, this is interesting. I think I want to make a distinction between viruses and bacteria, where there have been concerns with bacteria and people using antibacterial products, and you know, that could change the pressures on the evolution of bacteria to breed some resistance in bacteria. Viruses are different in that we're not trying to target them with the antibacterial product. They're actually broken down with cleaning products. Your regular household cleaning products are fine, and they're not going to be able to evade disinfectants. So it's a more of a physical action on the virus that breaks them down that will continue to be effective.
Thank you. So Sonia has a question, and I think ultimately this question is something that everybody really wants the answer to. With the opening of the tennis courts, parks, etc., is it now okay to play with more than one household? i.e., could I ask 3 other friends to play tennis or frisbee who are not from my own household, as long as we're careful with hand washing and not touching faces, etc.?
Yeah, I get it. I think you know, the thing is, if you're going to interact, do physical activity with someone else, can you keep that distance? Can you keep in mind what practices would help with not spreading infection? And as I say, I do trust the population to use their judgment. I know people have been out golfing and they're talking about, you know, that's people from different households, you know, and so there's ways, I think, if we all watch it, you know, in general, if all of us are being a little more lax and we all sort of just slightly increase our interactions, it adds up at the population level. It really does. And there are modelers that would say if we ease up 20% on our physical distancing, that could lead to a second wave of infection. So, you know, there's not a lot of wiggle room there. I think we have to keep that in mind. But we will be monitoring. We'll detect that early if we're starting to see a rise in infection, then we'll try to reinforce with the population that they need to be careful.
Is it fair to say that this is absolutely not a time to be complacent, particularly with the distancing aspect, the physical distancing?
That's what I'm trying to convey, that it's been what's given us success so far, is slowed down the transmission of this virus, and with everyone doing their part. And so we need to find a way to balance, right, to make this more livable, to manage with this virus. And so we're just at the beginning days of learning that. And I think, you know, in some ways, it could be more anxiety provoking right now, because just staying home was like, I felt, okay, well, at least I'm safe here. And so now going out and about, you're pretty safe, but maybe not quite as safe. And then you're trying to figure that out. And so I think, again, we're trying to be clear that there are things in your control. Focus on what's in your control, which is keeping a distance from others, wearing a mask if you can't, those kinds of things we can all do. And then as we're able to see what the impact has been of opening up businesses, we should see that in 2 to 4 weeks. That may give us more confidence, again, to go further and increase more of the social interactions, again, monitoring. So trying to handle that anxiety by going slowly and giving continuous feedback to people.
Perfect, thank you. Our next question comes from Sarah. If we are playing in a highly used public green space, should we change and wash our clothes when we get home? So, for example, Sarah mentions she's often at Strathcona Park and it's very, very busy. So is that a best practice then, if we're outside and enjoying physical activity, to change immediately?
I think it depends on the type of physical activity. I absolutely always recommend that people wash their hands when they come in from being outside. People have asked me questions about shoes before. I just recommend leaving your shoes at the front door and not wearing them through the house. In terms of changing all of your clothes, that's probably not necessary for most types of physical activity that people are doing outdoors. If you're walking or riding your bike, you're not likely to pick up respiratory secretions on your body. Again, I'm thinking of what's still off limits. Our play structures for children, little children. That is more of a place where people aren't. Little ones aren't able to keep their secretions to themselves, and so there'd be more chance of transmission, but those are still off limits.
Thank you. We have a question from Rachel regarding the care of a reusable mask. Some websites she's visited mentioned ironing cloth masks after washing them. Is that necessary if you're washing and drying on the hot cycles as well?
No, I haven't seen that personally myself. It's not in our list of recommendations in terms of any kind of particular treatment that a mask needs by ironing. We suggest that you wash them as you would your regular clothes with detergent, and that should be fine. That should get rid of any of the viruses. I think Ashley might have given a link in the chat bar to our site that has more information about that. Yes.
Yes,
so
she
there
did.
should be more detail there as well.
Great. Our next question is from Lewis, and he wants to know if a private chlorinated swimming pool is safe or unsafe.
So chlorine will kill viruses. It does that very well. There's good evidence of that. I think the reason why pools are closed is that they're public pools where people would gather, and it's more the interaction with people in the change room or beside the pool that is the risk for transmission. It's nothing to do with the virus in the water. And so a private pool that's in a backyard or some that's not a place where a virus would be expected to grow.
Well, that's interesting. I think people presumed that there was some kind of risk actually swimming as opposed to the risk of the pre-swimming and post-swimming activities. That's truly where the risk is. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Clarity is everything. I think there's probably a lot of people on this call that are so grateful that you're actually clarifying some of these small issues. I know the details are pretty specific, but I'm sure that there's a lot of people that have all of these, well, I want to do this, I want to try this, and they just don't know if it's appropriate. And I think it's, I'm just going to hop in here and say, I think it's amazing that people are taking the time to ask rather than go ahead and do. So I'm very hopeful for Ottawa and our ability to continue this recovery. Oh, great. We have another question. You and the OPH communication team should be commended on your consistent messaging that has remained as positive as possible and very engaging as usual. I love that. The question, understanding that economic recovery, physical health, and mental health are closely tied together, consumer confidence seems to be a rebound difference maker in European and Asian jurisdictions. How does OPH see their role in increasing consumer confidence for consumers so that they can return to an adapted new normal, especially as we enter stage 2?
Oh, that's a great question. I appreciate the perspective of this group, and we'd love to hear more from you. I think I'd like to keep in touch. I've said that to Sue Ling before around what's happening in your world around consumer behavior. The confidence is an interesting one here, I think, and also the culture change around wearing masks and protecting each other. Would love to be able to measure that. I also think that people of Ottawa are doing the right thing for the majority, but I don't have a good measure yet on the frequency of mask use when people are within 2 meters, and I do get a lot of tweets about people not doing it. So that's not an objective world out there in the Twitterverse, but so we're interested in, from your perspective, as you see people coming into stores. So confidence, I think, again, going back to what businesses are doing, highlighting how much businesses want to do the right thing and have been speaking to open safely. Businesses have been at the forefront of recommending mask use in many places, and so demonstrating that. I think I can talk about that when I have my media availabilities. I can share that businesses have their employers' health and their customers' health in mind. I think the overall context is important in terms of talking about the fact that infection is decreasing in our community. If it looks like there's a problem with confidence in consumers, then I'd like to hear more about that.
I'm just going to hop on to Rick's question and comment about consumer confidence. And Rick is one of the members of our SME Council at the Ottawa Board of Trade. And we discuss the issue of consumer confidence a great deal, because it's one thing for the government to say, okay, we'll start reopening the economy slowly and responsibly. But if we open all the restaurants, are consumers feeling comfortable and safe enough to actually go to them? It's one thing to reopen. It's another thing to understand the psyche of what's going on in people's minds and whether or not they're willing to do it. And I think that from the Ottawa Board of Trade's perspective is that we'd love to see more leadership in instilling confidence in the public and in the business community in particular. Is that fair, Rick? Is that a...
Yeah, thanks, Lynn, and thank you again, Doctor, for being here. And it's a struggle because we're not necessarily sure from within the business community, is this something we should be driving ourselves? Is it something we should be driving in small groups, small pockets? Should we be lobbying the provincial government, municipal government? It's a while we're still also trying to run our own businesses or manage the kids and all the rest of that stuff that we've already talked about. So certainly any help and guidance that you can provide, whether it's official or unofficial, anytime you can provide, and I'm not sure that there is a consumer confidence issue, but it's certainly something that when the limited data that's available in other jurisdictions, it seems like it's a difference maker when everybody was focused on how do we safely and find this nice balance between providing really good information around health and safety, but that's also kind of has this undertone of we can find a way to get back to some type of adaptive normal. We can do this together. That's kind of this positive vibe, which OPH does really well already, so maybe you are the perfect sounding board to try to help within that. So thank you.
Okay. Yep.
Does that help, Lynn?
It does. Thank you, Rick.
Thanks.
Dr. Etches, we have a few more questions that are coming in, so I'm going to keep moving along here. Karen would like to know if you think that wearing masks is going to become a standard for all public events from now on. So things like Blues Fest, you know, a big crowd of 30,000 people all breathing on you.
I think the emphasis will be to make our advice tailored to the situation in the community, the risk of transmission. So we will have to see, depending on how much virus is in our community, what's appropriate at the time. Early in the pandemic, the federal government released a framework for mass gatherings. I think they called them mass gatherings, not mask, mass. And they kind of, again, used a risk-based approach to talk about smaller gatherings have less risk, gatherings of older adults have higher risk, you know, gatherings where there's a lot of interaction between people have higher risk. And so I think the emphasis will be more on, let's not have a Blues Fest right now if the risk in our community is really high, rather than suggesting people wear masks. But standard baseline recommendation would be, if you are coming within 2 meters of others, to wear masks for now until we can be confident that we've really succeeded with this virus.
Thank you. We have another question from Sarah. Can you share any detailed insight from how things have been going within the essential worker daycares? So the daycares set up specifically for our frontline healthcare workers and their families. And have there been any outbreaks? How are the children responding to the new procedures? And do teachers wear masks all day? And then Sarah goes on to say, thank you for being so open and accessible and transparent. I am truly grateful that you are our Chief Medical Officer at this time. You're doing a fantastic job. I think she tagged that on because she's asked 3 questions so far. I'm just teasing you, Sarah.
Yes, and you know, part of my job is to communicate and to be transparent. You know, there's no choice, right? And I think people generally do the right thing when they have the right information. So that's what I'm focused on, is trying to make sure with the team that people have the information they need, and they'll generally do the right thing. My understanding with the essential worker daycares is there've been a couple of times where people have been sick, a worker, and they've gone for testing for COVID-19, but there's not been any confirmed cases of COVID-19 in the daycares that are being run for essential workers. Yes, I believe that the employees are wearing masks all day and practicing those things like cohorting and smaller groups and not mixing. So far that's great.
Thank you. Our next question is from Jazz, who is one of the spa owner we were chatting with earlier, and she's referring back to the toolkits that you mentioned. Where can people find these toolkits?
Okay, I think we are just about to post it with the City of Ottawa. So again, I'll just check if Ashley is able to post anything yet. We're doing a media availability at 3 o'clock today, and I think, yes, so Ashley's confirming it'll be out after the media availability at 3 o'clock, probably on the City of Ottawa website, and we'll also link to it on our workplace website. So we have a lot of COVID information. There's a section there for workplaces, and you would find links to the material there. And we can also send it out to you, Lynn, to share with the group.
That'd be wonderful. I will send out a link to the recording once it's live on our website. And at that time, with your permission, I'd love to share all of these links with everyone who's been on the call today. That'd be great. We have another sort of a comment. Genevieve is piggybacking on Rick Chase's comment. There is a consumer issue regarding lack of safety concern for employees within retail stores. And she's sharing that her 21-year-old son is berated multiple times a day by impatient clients who cannot be served as quickly as before COVID-19. So that's kind of a sad commentary on our members of the public, and it saddens me to see that here in Ottawa, but I'm sure it's not news or surprising to anybody that it's actually happening. But I agree with Genevieve. I think there is a possibility of a consumer confidence issue. And then Sarah.
Yeah, I think when you take the whole picture into context, you know, people are more stressed for many reasons at this time, and that you know, can affect our ability to be patient with one another, for sure. I'll take this away again as a point that if I have the opportunities and conversations with others or with the public through the media to again highlight the work that businesses are doing to protect others, and that this may mean we have to be a bit patient as practices have changed to provide that safety.
In sitting in on our SME council meetings, which are now meeting once a week because of our current economic situation, I think it's really fair to say that businesses just really want to open correctly. They don't want to go through a second phase of the pandemic. They want to make sure that they're reliable and responsible, and that consumers will say, yes, I would like to eat at restaurant ABC because I know they are following the rules and guidelines and best practices. So from a business community perspective, I think the desire to be compliant and to be safe is absolutely there. They absolutely know that they have to do things well or their clients will not come back. It's just my 2 cents from what the SME Council is working on right at the moment. And I see that Ashley has posted another link. That's fantastic. The link to your workplace page. So thank you, Ashley, for posting that. So we have just a few more minutes left. Are there any last minute questions for Dr. Etches that we'd like to sneak in?
Hi, it's Sarah here. I just have one quick question that my daughter asked when she stopped by. She wanted to know if she'll be able to play with her cohort at camp, like mix in with those kids, touch them and play with them in close contact.
And here she comes.
Yeah, I think that's part of camp, right? It's hard to imagine a camp where kids aren't playing together. I know that they're going to try to make smaller groups. They're going to try to emphasize games outdoors. They're going to try to emphasize games where people are further apart, but you can't completely stop the interactions. The good news about COVID-19 for your daughter to hear is that kids don't really get very sick usually. So usually kids are really good at fighting off this virus, and that's reassuring.
It must be difficult for parents to have that conversation with children when they don't have the answers themselves, and to instill confidence in their children, maybe sort of alleviate some of their own anxieties. I'm sure kids are uncomfortable right now. Fortunately, I don't have any young children anymore, so I don't have to deal with that issue, but I see Cecilia's nodding yes. Have you had a hard time having this conversation with your children? Unmute, please. Here, I'll get you up. There we go.
So I have had issues with my son because he is he's an only child, and he's 10 years old, and he's one of those old soul type children. Mm-hmm. So he's very aware of what's going on. He's also very aware that mom and dad's unspoken moods are different. So why can't you play with your friends? Why can't you go to school? Why aren't we watching the news? Why is everyone wearing masks outside? Like, it's tricky, and we make a joke of it. We call it the COVID, and we don't want to get the COVID. And in all fairness, in our household, we think that I've already had it in February. I got really, really sick a few weeks after getting back from Panama. So we've been trying to use that as reassurance, going, look, I might have already had it and I got better, but no, you can't see your grandparents, and no, you can't go to their house. And his caregiver is 74 and undergoing chemo treatment for breast cancer. No, you can't touch her and make her feel better. So that is very difficult for our household right now. And I know that we're definitely not the only ones. So we're just going to try to save for therapy, I'm going to guess. But like, we don't know what else to do at this point, because I refuse to lie to him and tell him everything's going to be okay until I actually have concrete, look, this is what's going to happen. So.
Yeah. Sounds like you're really supporting him through this nicely. And I've said to my kids, I said, this won't be forever, but they really live in the day, right? And so to them, it feels like forever already. So it's hard.
It feels like forever to me too, I have to say. It's been a while. I'll be looking forward to safe relaxing of some of our guidelines and behaviors once it becomes responsible to do so. We have one final question that Jazz has sneaked in. She's just wondering, with respect to the toolkits, is there a specific category that spas would fall into, or do you know that off the top of your head?
I don't personally, but I'll look into that for you and get back to you.
We'll find out for you, Jazz, and let you know. I'm sure Ashley will help me find the right information for you.
And I think we're also taking away the question about the frequency of cleaning the washrooms, that one size doesn't fit all, but if there's more guidance we can provide, we'll get back to you on that one as well.
Oh, that's great. And it looks like we have a final comment that's come in, again from Rick. With what I'm sure are very long, very busy days, just wanted to say thanks to the OPH team for taking the time today and for all that you're doing to support the community. And the Ottawa Board of Trade absolutely thanks OPH for their leadership and transparency for sure, and accessibility. You know, Dr. Etches was really kind to take some time out of her day. I know this is part of her role, but I love the fact that she's willing to have kind of this casual chat with everyone to answer our questions and give us some clarity and guidance on moving forward. So yes, we do thank you for that, and the entire OPH team.
Well, thank you for what you're doing. It's really important to get people back to work and to do it safely. So please keep in touch with what you're seeing out there.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
just before we wind up, I want to take one quick moment and make a thank you to our sponsors. As a not-for-profit, we absolutely cannot offer programs like this without the support and sponsorship from our members. So I'd like to thank the Ottawa Citizen, who is our community partner. I'd like to thank Enbridge Gas, who is one of our event sponsors. I would in particular like to thank Ottawa Public Health, one of our members as well, who has given up their time today to do this, and their time is in hot demand right now. And most importantly, very grateful to Karen Brownrigg of IHR Advisory Services, who has sponsored our entire Wellness Wednesday program right through to the end of June. And Ottawa Board of Trade is so sure that our ability to rebound from an economic perspective is completely related to the health and well-being, both physical and mental, of our entire community. So we're grateful to Karen's leadership, and we're grateful to all the rest of our sponsors who help bring us these programs. And in saying that, I'd like to wish everyone a wonderful afternoon, and really get outside. It is gorgeous. As soon as we're done, I'm picking up my laptop and I'm going to go sit out back with the dog. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful afternoon.